So WorkFlowy user group. It's a Slack group. For those of you watching from the Slack group, that won't be a big surprise, but I'm going to be posting this to YouTube for two reasons. One, as a way of just expressing my gratitude to you guys in general that are on the Slack group, but also for those that are watching this that use WorkFlowy but don't know about the Slack group. I'm going to have in the description below here a link that you can use to be invited to the Slack group. It'll get you access directly to it. So if you're a WorkFlowy user who uses WorkFlowy and wishes there was a community out there that was just WorkFlowy users, there is. It's the Slack group. Join it and jump in to the crazy conversations that take place. So if you don't know what Slack is, it's just a bulletin board, basically that allows you to interact, break out for particular discussions on a particular topic. It has some channels on some particular topics. You can also upload files, pictures, chunks of code. There's a lot of things that you can insert, and it's just a way of communicating. I think usually it's for a business environment. Like if I own a business with multiple employees, we could all have conversations on Slack, which would then become archivable and searchable and that kind of stuff. So that's what Slack is in general. This group was created by a guy named Frank Bird. And in 2017, I just found out yesterday. And so it was created essentially to create a community for people that use WorkFlowy to hang out, answer questions, solve problems, that kind of thing. And so I think I was invited to it, I'm guessing, by Frank DeGaner. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Frank, who wrote the WorkFlowy book, wrote a lot of the WorkFlowy blog posts, and now is actually on staff as their customer service guy. And so I think he invited me, I'm guessing. I don't remember. It would have been about 3 years ago, probably soon after it started. And I got on there. I was a kind of a lightweight user. I was just starting to use WorkFlowy a little bit for some stuff. And I got on there and read some stuff. It all sounded kind of technical but interesting. And then one day this screen came up, which was kind of starting to be a big deal for me because I was starting to build some systems a little bit on it. And it would house some lists of a particular nature for me that I'd use in my construction company. And so when it didn't pull up either on my iPhone or on the computer or something, I was alarmed. And so I thought, well, I'll go to that Slack group and see if somebody knows what's going on, if they're having the same problem. And they did, and they were able to answer my question, and WorkFlowy came back online, real quickly. And in fact, I think it was just on my computer. It wasn't happening in general, so I needed to reload it or something like that. So that answered the question, got me back online, and also showed me how helpful the group was and how interactive they were, and that was kind of encouraging. So as I started to build more and more systems, I went from my old Trello and paper-based systems in 2017. So around the same time that the Slack group was getting going, I was really starting to use WorkFlowy, and so this group became a great resource. And so the Slack group is maybe about 10 to 20% just goofing off and joking around, but it's mainly what's going on here is people are asking some specific questions about how to do something. You could see here Manuel asked a question about how to do a search on hashtags, and there's a few answers over here in a thread. Somebody's taking a poll about how people use a particular thing. Somebody's asking a question about a problem in a particular way they're using WorkFlowy. So there's a lot of discussions. There's also channels over here about particular workflow related topics or use cases. But it's anything you want it to be. Any questions that you have, comments you want to make, features that you wish were available and you wonder if they are or if they're going to be. The dev team is on here as well, and customer service, so you can get your questions answered. I'm going to give you one use case that I've used that's had a huge impact on my workflowy life. I think it was probably 2018, a couple years ago. What I was wishing at that point, I was all of my personal and business related tasks and project management had become embedded in workflowy, so I was using it all day, every day, doing all my planning on it, and so it didn't look like this at the time exactly. I've modified it, but it was basically projects. These are mainly personal projects right here, and these are my business projects. And then this top one is my today node, things I'm doing today. So at the time, I have all my tasks inside my projects, and I would have to visually go and search and sort each time I wanted to decide what to do next. It's 10:30, I just finished up my bookkeeping or whatever I'm working on, then I have to decide what to do next. And all of my tasks were embedded in the projects. And so I'd have to go and visually sort. And what I was wishing for was a way to pull tasks out of a project, create a to-do list for today, organize that to-do list however I wanted to, by chronology or by context or whatever, and just kind of take the individual tasks and put them wherever I wanted to in whatever format, and then be able to easily put them back into their projects. And so I threw a question on the Slack board, hey, is there some way to do this? And there wasn't currently, there's not a feature right now at this current moment in Workflowy right now. There's cloning or mirroring that's getting worked on and is in beta. I don't know if it's in production yet. I'm on the beta version, where there may be some other options for how to do it. But at the time, there really wasn't an option that was native to Workflowy. Probably 15 or 20 people contributed their thoughts to how it might be possible and ways that you could do it to make it possible. One particular user said something, it was Circasenia, said something in particular that triggered being able to visualize formatting my Workflowy syntax in a different way that would enable me to do what I wanted to do. So at that time, and based on that conversation from the Slack group, I redid my Workflowy labeling, and before I would have just had, this one right here, I would have just had the Barrett kitchen remodel or something like that. I just would have labeled it, and that would have been the heading. But I went to tagging, and I wanted it to be standardized number of characters, so I could visually sort easier. And so I added the tag. And what the tag, because you can click on it and it searches by that, like hashtags, you can search by anything that is an tag or a hashtag. So that was one feature that enabled what I'm about to show you. And then inside of that, so I own a remodeling company, and I use a template. So every time I get a new job, I just copy and paste the template, and so they all look the same. And then I relabel the template node to the job name, and then inside of that, there are job phases. Let me jump out to one that's not completed. That one's almost done. I'll come into Newman. This is a fairly new job. So you can see there's a heading, there's the job name, and then there's the job phase. And in inside of each of these are the actual tasks. And so I used @ tags for the job name label and the phase label. And now I'll show you what I can do. And again, I'm not showing this really as a tutorial for that. It's just as a way of showing you that it was kind of a complicated thing that needed to happen to reformat my WorkFlowy so that I could do what I wanted to do. I just had this idea, couldn't figure it out, but jumping onto the Slack group, posting a question, interacting with 15 or 20 people on there, a solution kind of came into my head, and I went in and redid my my WorkFlowy. So real briefly, if I can, hopefully I can do this briefly, I use Scrum. So hashtag SPR is something I use for anything that's related to this sprint. On each task, I'll add that tag. And then hashtag IMP is for in process, and that's for anything I want to be not necessarily doing today, but aware of today. The reason I do that, and I'm explaining this because I'm about to use it and I want you to understand what you're looking at a little bit. I have about 280,000 nodes in my WorkFlowy. Inside of all of these right here, there's accumulated about 290,000 nodes. Obviously too many to look at. And so my whole orientation for my workflow and how I use it is to help me narrow my focus to the smallest group possible in a given context. That's kind of the whole philosophy behind my WorkFlowy. So on Saturday, I will do my sprint planning. My sprint is 1 week long. And so I'll go through my tasks and add hashtag SPR to any nodes that I want to be aware of this week. I won't necessarily do them all, but I just want to keep them on my mind, and a lot of reasons why I may not do them. It's just something I want to stay aware of. But that takes it from about almost 300,000 nodes to SPR. There we go, to 191 nodes. So there's 191 now. So from almost 300,000 down to about 200 nodes, narrowing the focus for the things I want to work on this sprint. And then each evening, I add hashtag IMP for the things I want to be aware of tomorrow. And you can see right here, hashtag IMP for today has 55 nodes. So from almost 300,000 overall nodes, I narrow my focus to 200 roughly, or however many I add to the sprint. And then each day all I have to do is review those 200. I just scroll and select, and then trigger WFX to add the hashtag IMP. So it's narrowing it down. But then what I'm left with is, ignore this, I've already actually played around and moved some things into this today to-do list. But you can see these things are added. Actually, let me trigger IMP. They're still embedded in their own projects. So what that would mean is if I get done one task, like finishing up my bookkeeping for the day, then I have to go here, and it's good, there's only 55 nodes, but I then have to mentally and visually search. And the way my brain works, it works much better. I'm much more productive if I just have one thing to look at. What's the very next thing? So if I get done one thing, I just complete that. I want the next thing to pop up to the top. So I can just focus on one thing and kind of mentally prepare myself to engage with that next task. Having it embedded in all of the projects didn't work for me. So what I can do, I'm actually kind of part of the way through my process while I'm making this video. So I'll search for hashtag IMP. I'm going to hit WFX and select. So that's multi-selecting all of the nodes that are revealed by the search. I'm going to deselect this top node. That's not how it usually works, just a sec. Okay, whatever. Usually it just, anyway, usually it just deselects that top one. I'm doing something different right now. Oh, I know why. Yeah, never mind. It doesn't usually do that. So now I have all of the nodes that match this search are selected. I'm going to Control X to delete them and copy them. And then I'm going to jump in here and hit Control V. Okay, so I've pulled everything out from all of the projects, and now I just have a list of the things I'm going to be working on today isolated into this particular node. Now I can move things around, do whatever I want. I could come in here, and if I'm going to be in town, do a search for #town, and I can move them inside of that. And then once I'm done that, I can decide what am I going to do first, and I can move them around however I want to. And then I can put the things inside of at computer, at home, whatever I want to do. And then all I have to do is, okay, I'm going to be at my computer. I'm going to put that first. And then whatever I can organize it however I want to, and then I can just do the next thing. Once it's time to go to town, if I have an event, I just move this down, and then whatever the first thing is on the town list. Which, that's great. That's what I was going for. That's what the Slack group enabled, was for me to create this situation. Now, how do I get them back in? This was actually the magic. This was what I needed, and this is what I got from that particular conversation from the Slack group. So all I do is I just get everything outdented. Makes it a little easier for me to do it. Move these labels back, and then go back to home. Now all I have to do is a search. So I'm going to search by the label of the project and by the phase if there's a phase. And now I can just move it back in, hit escape, and then do the next one. Weekly flywheel, Friday, and move it back in, hit escape. It takes me maybe 2 or 3 minutes to get these all back into their own projects and into their own phases. For those of you that might wonder, what about the order? The particular order never makes a difference to me. They don't have to go back in a certain order. If they did, I could actually use a WFX sorting, and there's a number sort option. If I wanted to number everything in a particular order, that would be pretty easy. It never makes that much of a difference to me what order they get put back into their phase. They're going to get dropped into the top, which is the kind of right place, and if there's 5 or 6 I have to sort through, that's fine. That was not really a tutorial for how I use my WorkFlowy. All I wanted to show was I had this complicated situation I couldn't figure out. And I thought about it a lot, and I just couldn't figure out a play I could make to make it happen. But I threw the question onto the Slack group. People clustered on that question, gave their feedback, options, reasons it doesn't work, reasons a certain thing might work, wishes that workflow would have particular features that weren't currently available, that may be available in the future. But then a couple of people said a couple of things, and then Circasenia said one thing in particular that helped me see. I don't even know what she said at the time. I just remember that when I read it, I thought, oh, I could reformat, I could create @ tags, and then because it would be searchable, I could kind of snap them back into their own project. And so that's what I do. Really changed my life in a way as far as how I order my day, and in particular it changed it because of how my brain works. Like I said, if I can just have one thing I'm looking at and then just go down to the next thing and go down to the next thing, I get exponentially more done in the day. Because as soon as you give me a search to do and it gives me like a 2-minute opportunity, something's going to distract me, or I'm going to do a Google search because it'll remind me of something, and then I'll be down the Google search rabbit hole and end up in YouTube watching construction management productivity YouTube videos for an hour or whatever. So anytime I can delete the option of getting distracted ends up being exponentially more productive. So that's just one example. From my own personal use on WorkFlowy and interaction with the Slack group, there's really hundreds of interactions that have been helpful. This was just one particular one that really radically changed my WorkFlowy use. So thank you to all of you guys on the Slack group who have contributed, joked around with the group, and added your feedback that I know has been helpful to so many guys on the group. Thank you to the dev team and Frank DeGoner. If you can send me a way to say your name, I don't know how to say your last name, but Frank Bird for creating the group, and the heavy users on the Slack group that have been so helpful, and everybody just contributing has made it not only a great way to improve my WorkFlowy life, but actually it's improved my life. It's a fun group and we have a good time, and I look forward to interacting pretty much every day on the group. So if you are interested and don't have a community of WorkFlowy users that you interact with, click the link below and kind of paste that into your URL or whatever. I don't even know how it's going to work, to be honest, but you should be able to click on it or paste it and join the group. So welcome to those of you guys who are coming, and thank you to those guys who have been on the Slack group for so long and have been so helpful.